I hate theater. Well, it's so disappointing, isn't it? You know what I do when I sing in the darkened theater waiting for a show to begin? I pray. Oh, dear God, please let it be a good show, and let it be short. Oh, Lord in heaven, please. 2 hours is fine. 3 hours is too much. And keep the actors out of the audience. God, I didn't pay good money to have a fourth wall come crashing down around my ears. I just want a story and a few songs to take me away. I just want to be entertained. Isn't that the point? Amen.
Hello, how are we today? I'm Joe Risha and I'm with Musical Theater Productions, and I would like to welcome you all to our reunion of our 2012 production of The Drowsy Chaperone. Thank you so much for joining us on this next episode of MTP Reunited. We're here to chat with some of the original members of the cast and crew of that beloved production and to reminisce about some of the old days. So without any further ado, let's welcome our guests. Say hello, everybody.
Hello.
Awesome. So who would like to introduce themselves first?
I'll go first. Hi everyone, I'm Rick Smith. I was the director of the show and had the great privilege of working with all of these people that you're seeing today.
I'm Andrew Rethazi, and I was the music director working with the singers and the band in the pit.
Since we're doing artistic team, I'm Laura, and I was the choreographer for the show.
Since I'm sitting beside you, I guess I'll go next. I'm Chris. I was Feltzig for the show.
I'm Mary Jane Walzak, and I was the housekeeper, a reporter, a dancing monkey, a building superintendent, and probably something else, but I'm not sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Stewart. I think in this production, I was billed as Matthew J. Stewart because there was the other Matt Stewart at that time. And I played a gangster / pastry chef. I don't know if I was one or two. Perhaps Sam knows.
Hello, I'm Sam Shoebottom. I also was gangster / pastry chef, and I also was wondering if I was one or two. Could not remember. I think sometimes we just switch the lines around.
That sounds familiar. That sounds likely.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us for this reunion. We're so glad to have you. To get us started off, I'm going to ask a question of the team. How did you become first aware of the musical, The Drowsy Chaperone?
Honestly, I can't remember. I remember I did see an excerpt on the Tony Awards, but didn't know a lot about the show. I feel like maybe, Joe, you said this is a show you should direct, maybe? I don't remember. But once I got a hold of the script and listened to the soundtrack, I was absolutely hooked and said, this is a show that I need to be involved with.
Yeah, and I feel like, Rick, you probably talked to me about it, and I probably looked up some clips on YouTube and fell in love with it really quickly. And I sort of vaguely recall being out with you during Bye Bye Birdie, at the end of Bye Bye Birdie, and mentioning that, or us talking about this would be a great one to do.
This is one of my favorite theater stories, actually, because we were living in Waterloo at the time, and the tour was coming through, and we were just like, we don't know very much about this show, so let's just go see it.
I think we had seen the Tony Award performance with Sutton Foster doing Show Off, and that was all we knew.
You had, but I don't think I had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so we went, and we were there, and I just thought it was absolutely hysterical. Anyway, the couple beside us clearly disagreed with that. I was laughing just like uncontrollably through most of the show. And there was one point in the show, I think it was during the record mix-up gag, that the woman beside me just turned to me and said, "Oh, shut up." Like out loud, like during this. And of course, that whole heightened emotion thing, my like uncontrollable laughter switched on an instant to like uncontrollable sobbing, because I felt like it was just I just felt so like violated is maybe a strong word, but like just totally just shut down, and like now I can't enjoy the second half of this show. So we actually made a complaint and went back the next day. So we actually saw it twice in 2 days.
We made a complaint, just that, you know, to let them know that we had this very sort of rude experience, and the house manager was very polite and like, oh, I'm so sorry. Under normal circumstances, we would have been able to move you to other seats or something like that had you, if there had been an intermission or something like that where we could have brought our concerns forward. They always keep reserved seats for something like that, or someone's allergic to perfume or something like that. But because it was a show run without an intermission, there was no way for us to leave, and there was no way for us to address the issue. So they were like, can you come back tomorrow? And we were like, sure. So we came back the next day and saw it front row center. So that was great. So we actually got to see it 2 nights in a row.
Yeah. And I mean, this was before I really started doing theater as opposed to music. And I just thought, you know what, if I ever do a show, this has got to be it. Like, this is so much fun.
Yeah. So yeah, and I realized I neglected to introduce myself in the round of introductions for relation to the show. So not only am I your host this evening, but also I was the stage manager for the production of Drowsy Chaperone and the set designer. So I was wearing 2 hats. But yeah, it was fun to be a part of. And if I was the one who told you about Drowsy Chaperone, Rick, then that's amazing. I don't remember doing that, but but it definitely felt like a you show. Like after, it felt like the right kind of show. So I think Ceris was the one who always talked about, you know, the best director for a show is the person who could play any role in the show. And I still would like to at some point see the one-man Rick Smith production of Drowsy Chaperone. We could do it as a Zoomsicle!
That's what I was
So it's as close as you're gonna get is the karaoke night when I did the opening number of Fancy Dress. That's probably ever going to get to a one-man show for that.
For the cast members, were you familiar with the musical The Drowsy Chaperone before it was announced as MTP, or how did you come to get familiar with it?
I actually got to see Drowsy Chaperone on Broadway. I was on a trip with the original kids, and I saw it the very next night that Bob Martin stopped doing the show. So it was very interesting, and no, I just loved it. It was a woman that was sitting, I want to say beside me. She, unlike your experience, she loved the show. This was actually her like 7th time seeing the show, and so this was the first time she was seeing it without Bob Martin as the man in chair. And then funny enough, the man in chair that I saw, he would have been maybe late 30s. That was the actor, late 30s, and it played very well at that age as well. But no, so I was very familiar, and I believe I went right from the theater to Tower Records and bought the album, the original cast recording. And then so when I saw MTP doing it, I was like, it was even like, I don't even care which part. I kind of wanted Gangsters because it's fun. I would have taken Man in Chair. Basically, I was like, hey, you're the monkey. I'd be okay. I'm in.
I only became aware of the show through the announcement, and then I looked it up to see what kind of show it was, and it looked like a very fun and happy show. I thought, okay, I'm in with this one. This is a good one.
I think my familiarity with it didn't extend past just having seen some of like the key art for it that of productions that had been on Broadway. And I'd heard the name before, didn't know anything about the show. But what was exciting about this production for me was it was my first audition for MTP back in town since I'd been away to university in Kingston. So it was a great opportunity to sort of reintegrate into the theater community here. And I was basically interested in doing just about whatever MTP was going to be doing. But as it turned out, it didn't take long for my own affection for the show to grow. It was just one of those things where at the first read through, as we're all sitting, reading the lines, hearing them, and laughing. You just have a good sense of how much fun you're going to have. You know, sometimes when you're doing something a little bit more dour, a little bit more serious or dramatic, you know, you're moved at the table read. But like, I just recall us all smiles and laughing, and the audition process was really fun, and felt inclusive too. So yeah, it was a great time.
Wonderful. And how did it feel being a part of, because it's a very rare thing to be able to produce a Canadian musical, because there just aren't that many Canadian musicals that have been written nor have had success on Broadway. Now with Come From Away, there's much more recognition of some Canadian work and other things that have been more up and coming. But what was it like getting to work on what I assume was MTP's first Canadian written musical?
I honestly, I don't know as if I made the distinction between Canadian and not. I just thought this is such a well-crafted theater piece that offers so much opportunity for performers, and is so full of camp and, you know, stuff that I think that's what really attracted me to the show itself. The fact that it is Canadian written is just like a feather in the hat for Canada, and great to see that sort of recognition come at a Broadway level, because I don't think that's ever really happened. Even with Kiss of the Spider Woman, that was tested out here in Canada. I think that still was considered as a New York production. So the fact that this is the first one is amazing. I'm not sure that it had a lot of impact on me personally from delivering the product at the end of the day.
I think there's also with all Canadian theater, as Canadians doing Canadian theater, there's sort of a cultural fluency that we have with it, that we get the references, even if we don't consciously realize that we get the references. We just sort of relate to it because it comes from sort of a shared experience that's similar to, but not quite exactly the same as the American experience. It's not like seeing something that's, you know, German written or Finnish written or something like that, where it's just very different than our experience, but it's close enough. And I think the humor really speaks. The humor especially is one of those things that's very regional, and I think we all just kind of clicked in with that.
If I remember correctly, and my recollection might be incorrect, but I know that the sort of genesis of the show was sort of as a joke, right? It was like a dinner party performance for the original creative team.
Right. So the show came out of a present, like a wedding present or a rehearsal dinner present for Bob Martin and his wife Janet, who were getting married, and their friends put it together as like a joke for their wedding. And then it was so much fun that I then took and expanded it to make it a full show, with Bob not only writing the book for it, but also becoming the original man in chair who continued on Broadway. And then the bride character still remained Janet, named after his wife, through further iterations of the show. And it's fun being that sort of like homegrown kind of musical, much in the same way of like different ways for musicals to be born, and most recently with Broadway just having produced Ratatouille the musical, which was born out of TikTok videos. It's just sort of an interesting genesis for a show like this, and I think it just goes to show that, you know, great art can be made in different ways, and it's not always that sort of very serious, we're going to sit down and we're going to write a show. It's like, let's just have some fun and see what happens with it, and then it can grow and expand from there.
I think it might have had at least a couple of runs in fringe festivals as well. And that was a cool thing for me, just because going into DROWSY, I'd done a bunch of stuff in fringe festivals across Canada in the 2 summers prior to that. So there was also a very cool idea that, something that can come out of a festival like this can achieve such exciting heights and worldwide recognition for a Canadian product. It was very cool.
I enjoyed Matt's reaction to Ratatouille the musical.
I was there at the ground level for that one. My girlfriend was saying, "You gotta check this out." I could hear her humming the main theme throughout the house, and I'm going, "What is that?" And then she showed me some of the clips, and again, what started as a joke, what started as a fun thing, it clicks, it activates different people's creativity, and they say, okay, there's more to this. We can expand upon this. We can build this up into a substantial thing. So yeah, very similar, Drowsy and Ratatouille. We can draw some comparisons here, scholarly.
I'm hoping one day MTP will produce Ratatouille. I'll be there for that. And we actually now have a new guest joining us. Sue is joining us.
Hello, friends.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. But I'll let you introduce yourself and how you were involved in the production.
Hi, I'm Sue Garner, and Drowsy Chaperone was my very first time out at MTP, and I was the assistant stage manager. And Rick Smith, who I knew from our work connections, corralled me into it, and I've never had so much fun in all my life. So thank you, Rick. And I got to ASM under Joe Risha, who I'd never met before. Wow. And yeah, it was just a super experience.
Wonderful. Had you heard of the Drowsy Chaperone prior to Rick asking you to be a part of it?
I knew nothing. Nothing. And it was just this amazing piece of all things musical ever in one crazy package. The other thing was I don't even know, I might have seen one MTP show prior to that, maybe two, but I had no sense of the serious professionalism and talent in the community that were involved with this group, and I was just blown away.
So for, perhaps specifically for you, Rick, how is the experience like approaching this show compared to, say, other musicals that you've directed, given that its kind of byline is that it's a musical within a play? Did that change how you approached this particular piece?
I think certainly that premise is there. And I think just from the content and the material itself, it really is designed so that it really is almost two separate shows. One is the show within the show, the Drowsy Chaperone, and then there's the element with Man and Share. And so I think having to look at it that way, it sort of segmented it a little bit. But those two kind of stories were so intertwined through the storytelling that the Man and Chair brings to the stage, and then seeing it become live right within his own living room. I think they were so closely connected that I didn't really see it as much of a separation. It was really, as Sue said, it was just a huge celebration of all things musical. Whether you like it or not, it really was a representation of musicals, especially musicals from an era, early stages of book kind of shows. And again, it comes back to that whole campy feel to it. So I think it might have been a little bit easier because it sort of segmented out the two different types of shows. But I think the approach was very much the same, that we're telling this entire story.
We have a very special guest joining us. She's not emerging from within the counter as she did in the show, but I believe the chaperone is about to arrive.
Where's the bar?
Oh.
Hello.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
I have my tonic water.
Oh, lovely.
It's sealed, but I'll have it later.
So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for the viewers and what part you played in the show.
I'm the fashionably late Ceris Thomas, and I played the Drowsy Chaperone in the Drowsy Chaperone.
Were you, one of the questions that we asked before you arrived was, were you familiar with the musical The Drowsy Chaperone prior to MTP doing it?
Yes. I had only seen segments on the Tonys, but I'd listened to the album a lot. And actually, in the Fringe production that started it, a girlfriend of mine was the then choreographer.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
She was pretty miffed when they reused some of her choreography and did not give her credit. But.
And then what made you want to be a part of the show when it was announced?
Who doesn't want to say, where's the bar? And champagne makes me drowsy and that sort of stuff. Plus, I adore Rick, so the chance to have him say to me, be funnier over and over was something that I wanted to do.
Did I say be funnier or just be funny?
You started with be funny, and
Okay.
then you continued with be funnier, be funnier, be funnier. And when I finally decided that she was British, then you were like, oh, there, that she's funny now.
Yeah.
And why we didn't figure out that she was British at the beginning, I don't know.
All the process.
It was such a great character choice. It made so much sense because she is Dame Beatrice Stockwell, right?
Right. But when I told Rick that, he said, yeah, but not at this point. And I was like, wait for the penny to drop. You have to be British in order to ever be a dame. Because his previous note had been, Ceris, I like it. Sometimes you sound British, sometimes you don't. Just pick one. And I was like, oh my God, she's British. That's why the lines are funny. Because some things that you say without a British accent just aren't funny, but then you say them with a British accent and it's just hysterical. And the penny dropped, and fortunately, Rick finally caught up, and then we were good.
So what was, from the cast or crew, what were some of your favorite parts of the rehearsal process for this show?
Mine wasn't the rehearsal. Mine was the actual callback.
Oh.
Because if anybody was in the room at the Palace Theatre when a certain director decided that myself and Bill Hill were going to compete for the role of Adolfo, we had that sing off, and I don't know if any of you remember that at all, and Sam is laughing hysterically. that was pretty much it. I think I lost it at that point in time, where we were like, not just singing for a part, but battling for a part. That was pretty much the end of it for me, and I think Bill is the same way.
Who's a scoundrel? Like I'm hearing it again. This is outrageous. You mean you're saying this to people? To you? Why I must.
He did the same thing with the chaperones, and I remember there were 3 of us, but I only remember that one of the others was Deborah Mitchell, because I shoved her out of the way and stepped on her at one point and was like, I have to apologize to this lovely lady after doing this.
My biggest regret of this entire show is that we did not videotape the callbacks, because they were hilarious. That itself, was entertainment for me, if nobody else. It was just so much fun to watch the competition, and I would absolutely do it time and time again if I have that opportunity to.
I have so many great memories of this show because I got to watch it so much. I wasn't immersed in the actual performance. I got to observe, and so there was Jordan Henry, who made it a mandate to get into every single scene, and that became his shtick, and I think he pretty much accomplished it. And there was Chris leaving Bill. So Bill notoriously can ad-lib with the best of them. So he was off on a scene, and Chris just let him go, because he was just let him hang.
It was the night he had co-workers in the audience, and I knew he had co-workers in the audience, and it was the one time he said to me, don't leave me hanging, because I'm embarrassed for my coworkers being in front. I'm like, that's just an open door, Bill. Like, come on. I I left him hanging just a little extra longer than I should have.
But it wasn't just that night, because it like the first show, it was what we rehearsed. And then
Right.
it got longer.
It
and then
progressed.
It got longer
It
and
very
bigger,
much progressed.
bigger and bigger.
It very much progressed.
And then I remember Mary Jane with her monkey, monkey, monkey. And I remember Matt Stewart with his snake.
I was gonna say, I'm shocked it hadn't come up yet, but I think that this production specifically
I was leaving it best for last.
is notable in the history of musical theater for the development of a heretofore unknown choreographical masterpiece known as the air snake. I don't know if you remember when Janet, when we were all picking up Christine and she was weaving her way through the air and in the big undulating form, and I'm like, the air snake, this is big. This is a moment. This is a moment in musical theater. It's a big deal. Air snake.
I remember the roller skating scene with such terror because Jonathan playing Robert had to just kind of, my job was to push him. And if I pushed him too hard or in the slightly wrong direction, he was going to end up in Andrew's lap in the pit. And I have never been so terrified as watching an actor just free format on roller skates while singing. Oh my God, it was the worst. The other thing that was memorable was the plane in the big finale number. I mean, I don't even know what I was supposed to be doing during those moments. Hopefully nothing, because I couldn't stop watching, especially because we had Sam and Matt on opposite ends of the plane, if I remember. And was that when you were wearing that outfit, the beautiful outfit, hanging off the ends of the plane? And Sam, just, that scene is memorable. You brought joy to my heart every night, just singing for the pure joy of hanging off an airplane on the stage at the Palace. It was just classic.
Yeah.
Oh,
Great
thank
costumes.
you so much.
Great costumes in this production. Eh, Sam, remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Remember those,
Kathy
swimsuits?
showing up in that pink poofy thing.
Yeah, the swimsuits definitely showed off our better sides. No, I think for me, for during the rehearsal process, Matt is amazing to play off of. If you have to play off someone. I also remember actually, it was either the auditions or the callbacks. We never actually read together. And I remember going up and I was like silently cursing Rick because I'm like, will you let me read with Matt? I really want to read with this guy. He's hilarious and I would love to be opposite him. But I think also during the rehearsal process, Rick was just like, you two go play, just go for it. And just allowing both Matt and I just to have fun with it. Really so much fun, and just to play off one another was so great.
Yeah, it's amazing how much fun you can have when you're comfortable with your scene partner, when you know they have your back, and you know that you can have theirs, and it turns musical theater from being like a job into a joy. Only one letter difference.
We'll share the recipe with you. First you chop the nuts. Then you pound the dough. Then you bake it up nice and slow. And then you got a Toledo surprise.
Well, and even like once we got into doing the show, because Matt and I, we had to hang out in the pit for the whole, once the house was open. And like the little game that we got to play was like, we would make suggestions to the band. We'd be like, hey, how about this song? And so I know we got them to play the Cantina song from Star Wars. Careless Whisper, that was one of our favorites to do.
Yes, we always had to make sure Andrew wasn't yet in the pit because he wouldn't tolerate that tomfoolery. We'd say, okay, quick, Careless Whisper. He's coming. Never mind.
And I know I want to talk about Bill because I know he was infamous for improvising and going off book, but he never did that with me in any of our scenes. We improvised like crazy in the refrigerator, waiting to come out. but that was just between him and me. I never felt safer with a scene partner than I did with Bill. I miss him like with the passion of a burning sun because it was so much fun to play off him.
Now let me see if you can remember my name and get the shot! Now who is that that you see? I don't know. And how should you refer to me? I don't know. And who is it that always be? I don't know. Now see it properly.
I remember going home and making pound the nuts, and I made the dessert because I thought that sounds really good. I want some of that. And the roller skating, that was good too. But although I would say that he wouldn't end up in Andrew's lap, Andrew would have backed up and he would have just let him fall. Self-preservation, and he would still be waving his arms going, the music's got to keep going. It's got to keep going. And my giant King of Siam dress.
Yes.
Because I remember Rick coming up to me because I went with Becky to go try things on, and she was like, "What about this? This is so awful that it's good." And would you try it on? I was like, "Yeah, sure. It's got to be terrible." And she and I both agreed, "Yeah, this is it. This is one." And then Rick saw it and he was like, "Are you okay with that dress? Because it's like really bad." And I said, "Look, honey, it's exactly what it's supposed to be. And when else am I going to get to wear something this big and like swing around the stage and be all, King of Siam?" And it's like, come on. And it was the ugliest thing ever, but I loved wearing it.
Well, my big concern was that Ceris has always wished for and hoped for a glamorous dress to be built for her in a show, and then she walks out in this horribly hideous peach blossom outfit, and I'm going, oh, she's gonna hate this. Oh.
I eventually, in Light in the Piazza, got to have gorgeous dresses made for me. So it has happened. And in our suspended production of Pride and Prejudice, the lovely Mary Jane has created a gown for me. So hopefully I get to wear that one day.
Speaking of wedding dresses, the other thing that had to happen backstage at the very end of the show, 5 women had to morph into brides. 6 women had to morph into brides in some of them had time, some of them had no time, and some of them had 0 time. And that person was so stressed. And so we ended up, I think, with 6 dressers dressing the 6 women all in the same corner of about, a yard by a yard. And we literally arranged the order of where they were standing on stages, I remember, based on who was getting changed last and would be last one ready. They had their shortest distance to cover because it was crazy stuff. But the woman kept saying, "I'll never be able to do it." I went, "Yes, you will. There's always a way to do a costume. We will just figure it out." There's a lot of figuring out.
I had a dresser. I had Emily Banavaj, whose last name is different now, but she kept me so calm, and we literally had, you're right, like 4 seconds. But whatever I was wearing previous was like just fell off me, and then she was ready, and yeah, she was super fast. It was great. But
and all here, she's going to have a baby. She just announced.
I watched that backstage, that change of all the brides, because I had changed into my superintendent gear to go back on for the last scene. And I watched them change every night. And every night I'm going, are they going to make it? Are they going to make it? Are they going to make it? And every night they did. It was really great. Good job, Sue.
I'm protecting the innocent with names, but the gang that MJ hung out with, they were in quite a few different scenes, but then I think you folks had long lulls where you were backstage, and they had quite a lot of fun back in the green room, And so we had a call for them to go, heads up, it's time to come. But the one gent in particular, he had figured out the nanosecond that he could arrive on stage and be successfully in his place. But he also was responsible for some scene change materials that he had to bring on with him. So he can be late if he wants to, but the set's got to be out there. And so finally I had a word with him, because he would literally come running down the backstage, grab his potted plant and run on stage. Like it was, so he was there like 2 seconds before his entry. And finally I went, you need to be there a minute ahead. He went, no, I don't. I went, for me, you do. I have a heart palpitation happening every night. I'm wondering where you are. I'm trying to solve the problem of the potted plant. So he was great after that, because he just needed to know he was part of the bigger team of the backstage ballet.
One of my memories of stage managing this show, as many of you will know from my time when I was a stage manager, I'm a fun stage manager, but I'm also a no nonsense stage manager. I'm not usually one for the hijinks or the pranks or things like that. But on this show, I don't know why, maybe because it was just such a fun atmosphere. I can't remember the reason why, and he'll probably kill me for having done it, but I decided to hide Jonathan Geisber's roller skates on him. And I don't remember if it was a punishment because they were being left somewhere where they shouldn't or something like that. But I decided that, so I left them in the green room. Has that cabinet that frequently is used as like a locked weapons cabinet or something like that. So I buried them at the back of the cabinet, and my full intention had been that he would check where the roller skates were in pre-show and come ask someone where they were, and I would remember, and I would tell them where we were. Unfortunately, no one checked that the roller skates were there, and we started the show, and we got to the transition going into the roller skate scene, and Sue, ever so calmly, comes on headset and goes, we have a minor problem here. One of our actors seems to be unable to locate the roller skates. And I just went, oh, that's me. They're in the cabinet. I'm so sorry. I forgot that I did that and really meant to tell you before we started the show where they were so that this would not become a problem. And then I didn't. And then I'm pretty sure he made it on in time, but it was definitely a mad dash to get him in the skates and then get the blindfold on that he could see through and then push him on stage.
So I would say from the entire rehearsal process, that was the most fun for me because we were very fortunate that we had collected a very talented group of people. And as Sam said, it was easy for me to say, this is kind of what the feel is, go and do and be. And everybody would bring something to it. There were a couple of people that just needed a little bit more prompting, but overall it was just play, have fun, and then we'll use what you like. But from watching the show, because I think I was there all but 2 nights, the favorite part of the show for me was the airplane, was the quick change into the wedding gowns, and the opening number, because that's really where a lot of that magic stuff happened. And sitting in the back of the theater and listening to people ooh and ah when the fridge opens and the counter opens and the pastry chefs emerge from the pit and all that stuff, and the plane somehow comes together from the wings and people aren't expecting it. Those moments are they stand out because that's the magic of the show. The other part of watching it was sitting next to Laura and watching her reaction as the dance routines were going on, and she's sort of almost doing the steps in her seat, and the thing is
still doing them.
Here it comes, and then it works successfully. She's oh good, and then she can relax a bit. So from watching it, that's stuff that none of you had the opportunity to experience because you were all on stage or in the pit or in the booth. But those are the experiences that really stand out. And I think that's why Drowsy Chaperone really had a strong impact on people, and why people are still, I think, interested in the production because of all those different elements that they didn't expect to happen, and it just happened, and it happened seamlessly and with such talent. And I think that's what really resonated with the audience.
Well, Joe designed you a magnificent set with way more hidden joys than were in the, even in the big, fancy, expensive productions. And then you went and used every little piece of it to its to its max. I mean, we didn't need to come out of the refrigerator again later. We could have come from stage right, but it was like, well, I have it, let's use it. And when you get that kind of a gift and then you make the most of it, that's when the audience goes, oh yeah, this was satisfying. And I know Laura's feeling of going, are they going to get it right? Are they going to get it right? I know that 100%.
Laura, I believe you have a tradition of willing your cast members in order to have them perform correctly.
Yes, I will them on stage with my face and my body a little bit. And yes, it's a thing. I'm as exhausted by the end of the show as the performers sometimes. But honestly, this I mean, behind the scenes, under the limelight, was one of the strongest casts and crew I've ever worked with. Most talented, strongest ensemble on stage and off stage.
One of my fond memories, Rick, in response to the magic element, was one of our first design meetings where we talked about, I think you had presented an original concept for the set based on what you imagined his apartment to look like. And then I brought in my rendition of that for you. And with the storyline being about a musical that he's listening to on a record that comes alive in his apartment, and with some of the magic that was in the original production, like the fridge entryway, the fridge turning into the doorway into the house, existed, we started with those things. And I think one of the first things we came up with was we wanted to make sure that the chaperone had a grand entrance for that opening. So it was presetting her inside the countertop, which unfolded to reveal her like a padded carriage that she had arrived in. The sparkle curtain and all of that, but that we had to go one step further, and that we in that meeting, I think you came up with the idea, and we together figured out the spots so that every character in the show would have some sort of surprise entrance through that entire sequence as each one of the main characters gets introduced. And we had Ceris came out of the countertop. We had the fridge entryway was the first one. We had Aldolfo come in on the Murphy bed that we had built. We had Chris, I think you came in through one of the windows, if I recall.
Yeah, Kitty and I both came in through the window.
Yeah, and then pastry chefs being hidden in the orchestra pit. Janet came from the back of the house, even though we anticipated her coming through the fridge. But my favorite of all, and probably the bravest of all, had to be Angela as Trix, the aviatrix, coming in on top of the refrigerator and coming down through the hidden staircase that we built into the kitchen cabinet uppers. And like, there was no railing on top of that. I would never design such a thing today, but there was no railing on top of that fridge for her.
The first night she went up, she was not literally, she was crapping her drawers metaphorically. She was just, oh my God, what have I signed up for? And then she gamely did it for the whole show.
It was great.
The other shout out I want to give when we're talking about the crazy set is to Tom and his building crew. And then Tom comes in and ASMs. But Tom as an ASM, his claim to fame is his list isn't what's happening during the show, it's his pre-show checklist. And I've never worked, I don't think ever, with a set builder so obsessed with safety and mechanical things working. And he went through every hinge, every nail, every screw on that set every night and made sure it was safe for his performers. And he was meticulous and he was committed. But I mean, the building of that was quite something. And then the fact that it comes together so quickly and then is safe for a 2-week run was really impressive.
You know, was it a 2-week run? Because like the whole first week was like a freaking blur. Like I ran up, down, back, forth to get all my costume changes and my props and whatnot and get into the cabinet and the fridge and it wasn't until the second weekend that I went, oh, I can do this. And then I was like, it's over? What? We just started. What happened? I didn't like that part. I'd still be doing it if they'd let us.
We talked a little bit about some of the costumes and the quick changes. What were some of people's favorite costumes that appeared in the show, whether it was yours or someone else's? I believe it was Becky, correct, who led the costumes for this show? And
I like this one.
Was Kim involved at that point? I feel like she was.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So Becky Lanco, Kim McQuaig working on it. Yeah.
I definitely like the boys' swimsuits.
I remember
How could you
Donald
not?
liked the
How could you
swimsuit
not?
too.
Donald, our manager, did like the swimsuits.
The
Yes, and
cupcake dress, Kathy's cupcake dress, and then that dress for Christine, where she, I think, I'm trying to remember, but she has a quick change in the middle of show off.
Oh, I
And I'm
think it
trying
had
to
like
remember.
more costumes in show off if you count the robe and things like that. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was one where she, I think it was pinned up and then it came down. That was very clever and
right behind the beach umbrella or the
Yeah.
the patio umbrella, and we had to do
Yeah.
with the changer. And she had the unwrapped skirt for the bit. Like that was the number. I think it had the most props and most costumes in that one number. Then
that number. Oh. It was worth it, but oh.
and that show for me, calling shows is usually like fun and interesting for me, but that show had some of the tightest sound cues that I've ever had to do for a musical, between her pre-recorded voice for the glass gag in show off. And the record skips.
That record skip was the gift that kept on giving to the music department. It was okay, let me meet with the rehearsal pianist and we're going to figure this out. Then it was, oh, the cast. Oh, now it's the drummer who now has to play this 9/8 thing in like 4.5/4 because that's how it's set up with the thing. And then it was like, oh, the timing. Oh, great. The record skip, the sound effect. Oh, this is fun. But to something Kara said, I never worried once we got into performance, because I agree, like there was so much trust and so much ability to just be like, it'll be there. And if we get off, we get off, and we go, and it will be found. We will find ourselves together.
Was Rick Rogozinski our rehearsal pianist?
No.
No.
It was
okay.
Ian.
Well, the recording of our performance, Rick Rogozinski is in the audience. So his laugh is there forever.
He's
Which
on
is
so
awesome.
many of the recordings. Same with the recording of the Gondoliers that we showed earlier this year. His laugh is so infectious. Like it's sorely missed. It didn't feel like a real MTP show if you didn't have Rick Rogozinski selling 50/50 tickets and laughing throughout the whole thing at things that no one else found funny, but he would be the one person who would find it hilarious and be heard from the back of the house. So we've talked about a lot of the fun parts. What would you say would be some of the most challenging parts of the show for you, Rick?
Trying to block scenes with El Delfo and Drowsy when neither could make the same rehearsal night. I don't think that we actually had them in the same room until like the week before the show opened. So I think that was probably a real challenge. I mean, I know for myself, but I'm sure for both Bill and Karis, because how do you rehearse that big love scene when you can't really get it back together? And I think even when we did, Bill was having some back problems, so his mobility was a little challenged as well. So that, I think, was probably one of the most challenging, from my perspective, one of the most challenging parts of the show.
I think learning the show at the top was just difficult to try to figure out where the storyline was going. Like, just because when you're only in certain chunks of a show, like this show was very segmented, when it comes to characters, that, you know, I'm trying to figure out where in the storyline do I really fit in? Like where, like I know I've got this scene here and this scene there, but trying to put it all together was until we got close to actual opening night, did it actually really start to make sense in my head.
You should have read the script.
Maybe I should have. Thanks for that.
I don't know. I always found the monkey dance to be a challenge of all the things, because I always felt I was going to fall into the pit. I'm not sure why, but that's a memory that I have.
I'm with you there, MJ. I think when we moved into the theater, there was something different about the monkey dance, that from when we went to the rehearsal space to when we went to the actual theater, that was one that we had to not re-choreograph. I know that there was just like little things like, oh, okay, I can't actually walk there now that there's actual physical things in my way. So I think there's just certain little things. I know for me it was the monkey dance, and then I think it was for everyone was the skipping record. As Andrew said, the gift that kept on giving was just making sure that to get the timing of the record, the skipping dance for Toledo Surprise was the big one for me.
I think I changed the choreography a lot for that one too. It took me a while before I was happy with what that skipping record should look like. So I'm pretty sure there were people who weren't too thrilled with me for a while until I finally said, that's it. This is it. This is a done deal. But yeah, that was a challenging dance for everybody, a challenging production number.
That one, once it fell into place, it fell into place. The thing that got me was the dropping of the cane.
And here it comes, the moment that I've been talking about. Not only the culmination of the plot, but a moment that has fascinated me more than any other in the show and has brought me back to this record again and again. And here it comes.
Well, my advice to you is,
And this is it. This is it.
this way you go.
You see, you can't quite make out what she says because someone dropped the cane. I'll play it for you again.
This way you go.
That over and over dropping of the cane, that repeat, and the what is my line, and trying to figure out how to say it so that it was questionable what it was that I'd said. And then turning around and freezing and looking at Christine, and she's making faces at me. And she's giggling.
And then I recall one of the challenges for the band is that this show has so many blessings in the way that it's written, you know, because by that point we've gone through the cane, we've gone through the massive quick changes that the brides have no time to change and have to come right back on and are there. We have to get a plane magically on stage, which we managed to do by splitting it into parts. And then we get the song that stops in the middle and thrusts the theater into a full blackout, which the only way to achieve that at the Palace Theater is to also have all of the musicians turn off their stand lights. So we had to try and get them to quickly finish playing and turn off all of their stand lights. And then in order to come back into the song, they would have to start playing in the dark. And while they are playing, turn their stand lights back on in order to be able to continue playing the rest of the song.
Oh, here we go.
And then, of course, as the band got more comfortable, they got more and more daring with what they did in that 5-minute blackout. Things like costume changes, things like taking all their shirts off. Well, not all of them, but the gentlemen, all their shirts off. And actually, they may have been all gentlemen for that show. I can't remember.
It might have been.
Yeah. Derek would bring in these like ridiculous headpieces and neck pieces that he would hide under his chair, and then when the lights came back on, he would put them back on. That was fun.
Derek, otherwise known as Big D to Mary Jane from The Wedding Singer.
I've seen him every now and again, and I say hi, Big D, because I really don't know his name. I didn't know it was Derek. I called him that once in the grocery store, and his daughter looks up at him and goes, "Ooh."
I think we need to hear from Sam because he's dying there. He's just been in hysterics for the last 2 minutes.
No, I just remember Derek when we were in the pit before Andrew would come. almost every night he would give us a preview of what was going to happen, because we obviously were on stage and couldn't see it. So Derek would literally be like, this is what we're planning for tonight, and would like give us a little preview. So when the lights came on, I was anyways watching Andrew's face, because I was trying to see what his reaction was going to be for what they had in store for him.
It was just such a fun experience to be a part of that show. There were so many fun things to watch, so many things that went wrong or we had fun with. And one of my favorite scenes, which unfortunately Kathy's not with us today, but I love the spit taking scene. That was so funny. Her and Jordan had so much chemistry.
Some elements were progressive, others were stale even in 1928. You know what? I'm just going to skip ahead.
It was a hilarious scene. And then of course it has the added implications of after she's had to do the spit take 17 times or whatever, and the stage floor is covered in water. And of course I think it's right before Toledo Surprise. So there's like a big dance number coming and now the floor is all wet. So of course it's written in that Donald as man in chair is supposed to mop up, but I'm pretty sure the first few times we did it, there was a lot more monologuing and a lot less mopping happening at that moment. So we were like, I realize you have words to say, but we also need you to actually get the water off the stage. That's part of what this moment's about. So I remember that being a challenge early on. And there was, I mean, God bless Donald, so many words in that show and so many monologues. Like the opening monologue is like 3 minutes long and starts in the dark and all of these things. So that must have been so much fun to try and memorize and to work your way through, because so much of the action relies on his commenting in between to be able to drive it forward.
He had a lovely feel for that character, and the way then when he got to go and integrate himself into the scenes, like the joy on his face at being part of these scenes in musicals was just fantastic. I think one of the cool things about this show is that, like, for the people who love the old musical style, when you go and see an old musical, you've probably seen it 10 times, right? You know the songs, you know the plot. And so they might do something fresh and you generally love it. But with Drowsy Chaperone, that surprise in the audience, like, we don't know that show. And so it's just like one thing hitting you after another, and it's breathtakingly well done. I remember after the first dress rehearsal where we did Toledo Surprise, that's the big one that ends Act 1. It was so fantastic. I thought this is going to be one of those terrible musicals where Act 2 is just a bust after the joy of Act 1, right? Because you often have there's sort of a lull in Act 2.
Why are we dancing? Our dreams are in tatters.
Yes, but the tune is so infectious.
Oh,
And then Act 2, just with the monkeys and, you know, MJ and her little bangy cymbals and the Mikado or whatever they were doing. Like, it just layered crazy upon crazy right to the finish. Like, it's breathtakingly written.
It's just well written with so many fun surprises. The wrong record being put on and we're getting a number from a completely different show and things like that. It's just, I think for those who know the show, even if you've seen it before, if you haven't, it's that concept of it's full of surprises and constantly subverting your expectations of what you think this show is going to be. Because I also find, as hilarious as it is, I don't think you go in expecting that you're actually going to be moved by Man in Chair's storyline, and you legitimately are by the end. And he's such a almost comically tragic figure.
Oh, it's so frustrating. You have to understand, I love this show so much, and I haven't even seen it. My mother, she gave me the record. That was before our father left us. Oh, he didn't leave because of the record.
Since doing the show, I've seen it live at least twice more. Brandon Stafford, former MTP member, played Man in Chair in Windsor, and he was delightful. But then a high school student of mine who went off to Redeemer College, they did Drowsy Chaperone. Their Man in Chair was literally a man in a chair because he was a wheelchair-bound person, a wheelchair actor. And he actually came on, we first met him in his wheelchair, and then he had his chair and he was able to move himself from his wheelchair to his chair and then later on back again. And that was the best part of it. It was so moving that he was literally a man in chair. I thought, oh my, like they've cast him this way, but has anybody ever thought of staging it that way before? I was like, this works so well. It was so moving.
So I have a few last follow-up questions to our discussion as we sort of draw this lovely reunion towards a close. Some of you may have been a part of some of our other reunions, but you're welcome to share your stories again. But one of the things we'd like to ask those who are joining us is, how did you come to be involved with musical theater productions?
I will start again. Picture it, 1920. It's almost that long. Of course, through high school, always involved with the school productions. And then high school ended and I was looking to do some stuff, you know, in the theater still. And MTP, LMT at the time, London Musical Theater, announced that they were going to do 42nd Street. And anyone who knows me knows that I am not a dancer. I will fake it till I make it, but I'm not a dancer. And but I thought, you know, I wanted to be involved with something. And so I auditioned. I'm male, so I got in. And then we spent the pretty much the summer before rehearsal started taking tap dance lessons, because there's a big tap routine here. So I learned a little bit of tap to get through that show. Luckily, the big tap number, the director, Don Flexer, had said, you're all people on the streets of New York, like pick a character, be that character. And I chose to be the town drunk because I could stumble my way through the dance routine and still make it look like it was intended. So that's how I got involved. And then of course, from there, it's now been, what is it, 31, 32 years that I've been involved with the group, from performer, director, board member, set designer now. So it was the initial notion that here's an opportunity to do something musical, because that's what school shows are all about. So that's how I got involved.
And ditto, except I wasn't the town drunk. So I also started in 42nd Street and have been involved with the organization for almost a good portion of their shows. But I was not the town drunk. I did tap dance.
I had to look. That's what I just did now, to find out which show was first. And it actually was The Mikado in 2004. And what I remember about, I was in the chorus, dressed in a bed sheet that looked just like a bed sheet. It was amazing how it looked just like a bed sheet. I had people comment on my costume, say, that looks just like a bed sheet. I said, yeah, we rented that too. But my job was to put the samurai's costume back together again. I had the glue gun, and every night it broke, and every night I glued it back together again. That was my job, other than being in the chorus.
So right from the get-go, you were always wardrobe mistress slash actor.
It appears so, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This year for me is actually going to be, say, my 20th year, because it was way back in '91. Did my first show, I was in high school, and it was South Pacific, which I got to meet Rick, and I met Bill, and there's still a fair number of people that are actually still in my life from that show from '91. My wife, I met my wife in that show in '91. So it was in '91 that we did Pacific. Then I went off to theater school, took a bit of a break, and I've just throughout done shows. I haven't done as many throughout the years. I got back into it once in the 2000s, 2004, 2005. I came back and did some. But no, it's just, as I said, LMT, MTP, they've always felt like home to me. Whenever I've gone back to do a show with them, it's always felt like going back home to do a show. So I've always enjoyed it.
In 2005, my husband and I were deciding to move to London. And through the process of deciding to move to London, we had to research London and be like, is there a theater group? Is there a musical theater group? Because if there isn't, oh boy. And I think you were still LMT. I think it was that year that you switched to the MTP, but I'm not positive. But you were doing Secret Garden. And we decided to come to town, and we had a choice. We could have gone and seen the high school project, which was doing Oklahoma, or Secret Garden. And I thought, well, I'm not going to be in the high school project, so I'm going to go see if these guys are any good. So I saw that production at the Wolf, which granted is a difficult place to do any show, let alone a musical, but it was beautiful. And the singing was exceptional. And I said, okay, these people can sing, fine, it's good. I'll have a home. And then I auditioned for Annie Get Your Gun and was not cast, which Dale Hurley, he has since said, what was wrong with me? And I agree. And then I auditioned, I missed the auditions for Redagore. I was like, darn it. So then I auditioned for, what was that one, Rick? HMS Pinafore, and was in that. And then we did Anything Goes, where I met Rick. And we weren't even really introduced, were we, Rick? It was, let's run this scene that's never been blocked in this run through of Act One. And we looked at each other with terror, and I said, wanna rehearse? And we went from there. Yeah. Hey, there's Ange, who I helped change costumes with. We were going to move to London anyway, but I would not have been as happy if it were not for the Musical Theatre Productions Group. So that helped.
For me, it was we were moving to London for me to go to grad school, and I was still in Waterloo at the time, and I was being like, okay, I want to do something, I want to perform, not in the university. So I was looking up places, people, any groups that I could find, and here was this production of The Gondoliers. I'm like, I like Gilbert and Sullivan, I'm gonna do that. And so I auditioned. I happened to be here for a workshop that I was doing on the weekend of the auditions. So I thought, I'm just going to do that. I know I'm moving here in the fall. Let's deal with that. I got cast. I got in it, and then I want to say like halfway through the process, or like when we were already in the theater, Karis, we just sort of looked at each other and we went, wait, you did that show in Toronto, and I did that show, and we had been in a show 5 years previous, 6 years previous, somewhere in there, 2004, I want to say, and we just we were like, oh, hey, you.
But you also introduced your wonderful husband to us at the auditions, and he designed our set and stage managed the show.
So in follow-up to that, how has being a part of community theater influenced your life?
So not only did I meet my wife within working on shows with MTP, I've also been able to build some skills that are helpful beyond theater, things that I can take away and use in my work environment. And that's through that leadership as a director, through being part of the board members, most recently being the president of the company. I think those are capabilities that I've been able to expand on that I'm not sure that I would have been able to do necessarily without being involved within theater. But beyond that, there is a huge network of people that I consider friends and family, and reach out to anytime there's a need, because I know how they operate. I know that I can rely on them for doing things. And I've worked with many of this team and cast and crew a number of times because of that connection that we have and that network that's been built. And I think that sense of security helps create, not to say that it's isolated and it's only this group of people. But I think it helps to build that safety net when you're trying things and you're trying new things that you're not experienced with. It certainly gives you that safety net. So I think being part of this organization has not only expanded those connections within the community, but has also helped to develop skills that you can take beyond theater.
I got into theater from my marriage preparation courses because they asked you a question. Is there anything you wanted to do that you've never done? I thought, well, yeah, I'd like to sing and dance on stage. They said, there's community theater where you can do that. I said, really? There's community theater? They let you do that? And I tried out for my first show, Guys and Dolls, and I got a part as a mission band lady. And I felt like I'd won an Academy Award when I got that part. I had a line, General Cartwright's coming. It was a good line. So I think I've done a show every year. And I didn't do theater in high school. It was not something I even thought about doing in high school. And so this was my first opportunity. And I got to say, my life would be very gray if I hadn't started in theater, because there are so many wonderful people and there are so many exciting things to do. And there's a whole beautiful world out there. So thank you guys. It's been wonderful. And it's only been 40 years.
So I started doing theater as a kid. I had a dad who was addicted to community theater and he had no training, but man, he loved it. And so I grew up hanging out there. And I have to say that for me, one of the things that gives me the most joy and sense of accomplishment is being able to work as part of a collaborative team of people to produce something amazing. And so I genuinely love the fact that, especially in a musical, but when you do theater, there are many aspects of theater that I cannot do. I can't choreograph, I can't build a set, and I have so much respect for the people who do every single aspect of it, and everyone brings what they can do together to be this creation. So we're also interdependent. Not everybody's figured that out. Some people like to be there to be the star, but I love working with a team of people who want to be interdependent and feel the joy of it coming together and being wonderful, because there is nothing in this world like it. And I don't care who you are, if you come and join us, honestly, we'll find something that you can do that you're contributing to that team effort. Like, it's an unbelievable thing. So in the workplace, you don't always get that. It can be kind of cutthroat and very competitive, and what have you done for us lately? But theater is the place where you can go, and if you're with the right people in the right show, there's nothing like it. And MTP's been that for me a couple of times. It's pretty cool.
I'm just gonna sort of second what Rick said, in the sense that just I would probably say 90% of the people that I hang around with, that are my friends, that I go out and do stuff with, I met through theater. Be it with MTP or somewhere else, that I just feel where people from way different walks of life, like you've done shows with people that are doctors, that are nurses, that, are all kinds of different teachers, everything. And then we all come together for this certain love of this one aspect. And I just feel like whether it be serious play, or more of the goofy style like Drowsy Chaperone is, I think it is. And then even what Sue was saying about all these collective minds getting together, working together to create this one thing that cannot be replicated again. Because yes, there'll be other versions of the show and there'll be other people in those parts, but in this one time, it's all these people in the same place at the same time will make it magical. And even I think, Laura, you mentioned this earlier before, throughout this whole reunion, I started thinking back about the cast that we had, and holy smoke, Rick, way to be. That, putting together this cast it's quite an amazing cast when you think back through all the people that were involved in all aspects, from ensemble member all the way through. That's community theater for me.
Wonderful, and I second that sentiment as well. Having come to London, and with MTP being the first organization that embraced me as someone who had just come out of theater school and was looking for ways to get involved, I reached out to a whole bunch of organizations, and MTP was the only organization that got back to me and welcomed me with open arms, and hasn't really let me go. Like, I kind of still feel like I'm being tugged on, but it's a family. It's an environment that I wouldn't want to let go of, and I wouldn't want to have missed out on being a part of. And I love what Sue said about having opportunities for everyone, no matter how you want to get involved. As many of you know, right now we're in a time of a global pandemic and unable to continue with our live performances as we normally would be doing. But there are still ways to keep our community engaged, as MTP has been trying to do through reunions like these, through our online karaoke nights, through online events and performances that we've been taking a part of. And so, you know, if you've never thought about being a part of community theater before, now's still a time when you can try and get involved. If you'd like to find out more, please visit mtplondon.ca. And as a part of this, these restrictions on being able to gather for live performances and events, we've also been unable to fundraise as we normally would to keep our shows and our seasons going for the future. And we have several shows waiting in the wings to come back once we're able to get them back on stage once more. And if you are interested in helping to make that happen, or to make a difference to help keep MTP going for another 30 years, please visit our website once more to find out more about how you can donate and help support the arts in our community. And with that topic in mind, one last question that I'd like to ask of everybody is, what are you missing most about live theater now that we're in this age of COVID?
For me, having done like in the fall, did a show with the regional kids and having to do it all online, I'm really missing being in the same room and just having ideas bouncing off each other, whether it even be with the cast or with the artistic team or whatever it is. It's that collaboration. I think that's what I'm sort of missing, is that sense of collaboration amongst everyone. That's, you know, and also the social aspect too, of you get to see everyone, chat, see what everyone's doing. You can only do so much on a screen. But yeah, I think that's what it is, just the collaboration between great minds and thinking stuff. But also, I just wanted to bring up, don't know if everyone remembers, I still have my t-shirt from the show. So yeah, so I think it is. It's just that collaboration of just being all in the same room and having fun together is the biggest thing I'm missing.
I'm missing just getting out of the house. I'm missing getting out of the house and doing that, like Sam, you just said, like doing the collaboration. I'm also missing that actor audience interaction. That's a huge piece of why I've always enjoyed being on stage, is just being able to do something that I enjoy and have somebody else enjoy it as well with me. I think that's a huge piece to the puzzle.
It's the together. I miss the together. This is a lovely medium, but it's not together. And you're right.
You don't have to put on pants.
I've got pants on. I always have pants on.
I have pants on.
On that note of the together, I also miss performing together. Like, I miss the sort of the interactivity of and even just not even doing it, just watching a show or a performance of a song or a show or whatever, where where people are playing off each other. And I remember the opening ceremonies of one of the conferences I was at in the spring. It was like mid-June, and it began with a pre-recorded piece of a choir. Like, it was about a year-old recording at that point of a choir singing together. The music wasn't necessarily what I might be most moved by these days, but 3/4 of us who were in attendance, we were just weeping, and you could see it on the cameras, because we're like, we haven't had this in 3 months, and we're not even live in the room. It's just they're playing off each other. They're singing spontaneously. There's no spontaneity with this virtual stuff. It's so planned and rigid, and once you decide this is what we're doing, this is the way it is.
I think it was Nicole Newell who said in our Songs for a New World, but it's worth repeating, in our Songs for a New World reunion, she said something to the effect of, like, when we do finally get together in the same room and start rehearsing, and then when we finally do get into a theater with an audience, the electricity is going to be off the charts. Like, it's just going to be such an incredible experience. I can hardly wait. I don't know when that's going to be, but it's going to be a great day.
And I would say, you know, I'm grateful that we have this opportunity, and I can see you all because I haven't seen any of you in a very long time. But it's not the same, because I'd like to be able to give you all a hug, and you can't do that through a computer screen. And you know, I think everybody's touched. You know, thank you, Sam. I think everybody's touched on it. Is that collaboration? Is that connection that we have with one another? Whether it's performing and connecting with your audience and getting that response, and who doesn't want applause, or whether it's, you know, doing a scene with somebody else and having that connection and working off of each other. But there's so much even more than that, even through rehearsal process, that those are those isolated conversations that take place. I'm not needed to be rehearsing right now, and I'm off to the side, and somebody else is off to the side, and you having that connection and that conversation with them quietly, so you don't interrupt the rehearsal process. But you're having those conversations, you're making those connections, and I think for me, without having a show to work on, I think that's the part of it, is that we don't have that same personal connection that you have, that you would if you were in a rehearsal hall or on a stage or in a planning session or what have you. I think that's the part that is something that I long for and can't wait for the day to happen, that we can all get together in a room and, you know, have that connection again.
You're longing to hear quiet off stage.
Yeah, exactly.
And where are those people? We're starting at 7. What is happening here?
Oh, we still got a lot of that in online rehearsal.
I just want to say a shout out, because I know several of the folks on this call. I know Sam and Joe and Andrew, like, you've got the tech skills to be able to make theater happen right now in the online environment. And that is definitely a skill that most of us who do theater don't have. And we are so hungry for it. So I just say thank you for the effort you put into doing that. Because I know from anyone who talks about it, it's just like mind-numbing hours of work to do. But yeah, I think Sam, you did one for Angela for her school, and I watched it back, and I was like just sloppy at my computer watching people performing together and singing together, right? It's interesting when I think about going back. What I miss is the magic of Tech Week and that interaction, as many of you said, between audience and company. But I think when we go back, it's going to be a 2-step process, because when we go back, it's not going to be to full houses either, right? And so that's an interesting dynamic to say, here we are, and there are 40 people in the house or 30 people in the house. And what does that feel like? What does it feel like as an audience member to feel like you're the only one there? It's going to be a journey, but we will get back. Theater's been around since the Greeks or before, and it has survived everything that the world has ever thrown at it. So hang tough, friends. We'll be there.
I think in some ways, going back to just the joy of being back will help, I think, to compensate for the lack of numbers of people. I think we're just going to feel so wonderful and so beautiful about being back in a space, sharing with performers as audiences, and then sharing with audiences as performers, that I don't think we're going to notice it, and then it's just going to sort of gradually even back out again eventually. I mean, who knows how many years down the line, but yeah.
So thank you all so much for joining us for this reunion. I hope you had fun. One last quick question. Anybody else have any fun souvenirs from the show besides Sam's? Oh, Karis is coming back in. Yay. Besides Sam's t-shirt?
What happened? Oh no.
I completely forgot that we had this as well.
That's a hell of a souvenir.
That is. And then, Karis, the other question that we asked while you were out was, what are you missing most about live theater now that we're in the days of COVID?
The laughter. Being with all the people, making fun of people, having rehearsals and discovering all of those magical little things that you find in rehearsal. Auditions, having somebody you've never met before come in and you go, oh, where have you been all my life? You're perfect for this. And, you know, making new friends and all of that joy. Even if you're doing like a really sad show, or even not a musical, you know, like a really serious play, it's all because there's tons of laughter that goes on behind the scenes as you're working through the process. And the hugs, the laughter and the hugs.
What a great note to end on. Thank you all so much for joining us for this reunion. I hope you all had a blast getting to reminisce about this wonderful show. And I hope that these reunions will continue with some other productions. If you have suggestions, let us know. And we'll hopefully have you all back again sometime. And let's say goodbye to our audience. Thank you for watching.
Bye.
We'll sing